what works in marketing today is not going to work in 2 years' time.
As a marketer, you have to keep learning.
What advice would you give to marketers who are looking to specialize in the tech industry in the way that you have?
Strategic thinking, I think, is the most important thing, and taking it down to the basics.
A South African superpower, because we're so used to talking to so many different kinds of people and being empathetic to so many different kinds of people.
I think South Africa is very unique in that we experience a lot of issues where localization doesn't happen.
Hello, and welcome to South Africa Tech Marketers, where I uncover the journeys of marketers who are absolutely thriving in South Africa and beyond in the hope of helping you do the same. My name is Kirsty Lang. I am a senior content writer working remotely in Cape Town for a tech company called Buffer, and I am thrilled to be joined in my virtual studio by someone who is also making significant waves in the digital marketing space across some really big tech brands that you will absolutely have heard of. So before we get into that, this show is brought to you by the Global Talent Company, which aims to help marketers based in South Africa find their dream remote jobs at incredible tech companies all over the world. So if you're a marketer looking for your next gig, or you're looking to recruit some amazing South African talent, which as always, I highly recommend, definitely check out their website. It's globaltalent.co, and we will include that in the show notes as well. So with me today is Dean Civin, who is a digital marketing manager at ASUS. ASUS? I've recently learned how to pronounce that, Dean. Am I doing it right?
Yeah, great.
Okay, good to know. So Dean brings a wealth of experience from roles at Vodacom, Huawei, and beyond. Dean, thank you so much for making the time to chat today and to teach me how to pronounce things that I should already know how to pronounce.
Well, thank you for having me, Kirsty. It's good to be here in chat marketing.
Yeah, no, it is going to be awesome to dig into all of your knowledge, because I am a super nerd and I love some of the brands that you are working on or have worked on. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to hear your insights. But before we get into that, let's start at the beginning. I would love to learn a little bit more about your career journey. Where did you start and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey for me. I think I didn't quite see myself going in the direction that I did. But I ended up getting sort of an opportunity to go to Vodacom. And that kind of kicked things off because, Vodacom was it's quite a big brand. I think, they do quite a lot of big sort of campaigns and projects within South Africa. I joined the digital lifestyle team, focusing on, more of the services side of things. So, with the SMSs, please call me, is VLive, lots of their different platforms.
Please call me.
Yeah. I know it's a bit of a touchy subject in South Africa, but yeah, so unfortunately, it did go through a bit of turmoil, but when I was at Vodacom, it was something that they were, running with, and I think while I was there, I got exposed to a lot of different tech. I think, especially with Vodacom being the forefront of a lot of tech, they had custom ad servers, they, sort of working on building these big platforms out. And and I think with my position there, I was working as a campaign manager, so starting out my career, and, working with a lot of the agencies was quite a big benefit to me. I got exposed to a lot of sort of, lots of the agencies, Yonder Media, MobiClicks, MediaMark, all those agencies. So I think getting to touch all the different brands, I think in a way, and the campaigns that were running within the Vodacom space was quite unique. But yeah, so that was my space there. I think once I'd learned quite a lot from them, I think there was sort of a natural progression for me. And that's sort of where I moved on. I think I went to, from there into an agency for a bit and then to Huawei. And I think that was quite a big change because I think, working for a South African corporate and then moving over to Huawei was quite a challenge and a change for the better, I think.
It's a huge company.
Yeah, I went from sort of being on the publisher side. So Vodacom, I was within more of the publisher side. So, working with brands to get their campaigns executed across their platforms, to sort of moving into a space now where I'm working with this sort of tech brand that was very focused on the sort of products and services to the end consumer. And I think, Huawei being very prominent in South Africa, there was a lot of focus, especially at the time when I was there, in sort of trying to grow the market. I think, they've got quite a substantial sort of product offering and services. So it was quite interesting to transition from the publisher side to now being on the actual brand side. And yeah, it was a big learning curve because now you're sort of dealing with physical products. You're dealing with live services that are, being used on the daily by, tens of thousands of customers. It's a very, I would say it was a bit of a stressful change, but definitely where I learned the most.
Yeah, sometimes those changes are very necessary for growth.
I think so. And you, as a marketer, you have to keep learning. I think if you sort of stay stationary too long, you can fall into a bit of a rut because at the end of the day,
100%.
you sort of got to remember that you're marketing to, people at the end of the day. You're not sort of just ticking boxes in a way. You've got to keep it relevant, up to date, and keep learning.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me because the box ticking is so easy, right? Because you're kind of like, okay, I'm hitting all these outcomes, but like it's quite a big shift, I think, for me, because I have worked previously in editorial, which is a little bit more like outcome rather than result focused. So you're kind of like, okay, have I published this? Have I filled this column? And marketing, you can also kind of get stuck. Okay, I've produced this blog post. I've produced this ad. Done. But actually not done, because you kind of have to go through and, okay, is this actually having the result that I wanted to do? So that's such a good point to make. And also I love what you said about continually learning, because what works in marketing today is not going to work in 2 years' time, maybe 2 months' time. I think the rate of change that we are seeing at the moment is, I hate the word unprecedented, but it feels unprecedented, right? Because like with AI coming in with like completely new systems, I mean, we've had to really rethink a lot of stuff that we are doing at Buffer, because we have relied really heavily on SEO and Google search, and now people are using chatbots to do that kind of research for them. So anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but that sparked something for me, what you just mentioned. I would love to kind of come back to your journey. You mentioned that you didn't expect to end up where you are. I'd love to pull on that thread and see what you meant there.
Sure. The sort of opportunity to go to Vodacom was sort of actually came through the custom ad server that they use called Marble. Very unique in that, because I think, Vodacom with their intricate systems, especially being a telco, they can't sort of plug and play a lot, because all their servers and their databases, a lot of privacy and protection and security. So they had sort of bought in Marble, a company called ASUS developed it, and through Marble, I sort of joined that space. I think initially I was actually a financial advisor at Old Mutual, and so that's why it was unexpected. Yeah.
I love that. What transferable skills have you brought into marketing from a financial advisor?
Cold calling. No, not really. In a way, it is actually very similar. You're looking, at the end of the day, when you're a financial advisor, you sort of sit with the knowledge to be able to help someone, but you sort of have to essentially go and out there and market yourself to be able to, see clients, build a business, I see it as more entrepreneurial being a financial advisor. So you kind of have to wear multiple hats, and one of them being marketing.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. My husband is just starting his own business now. He works in IT, but like he's like, I hate marketing. Like, why do I have to be like making LinkedIn? But I have him like posting on LinkedIn like as much as possible. He's just like, oh, not another one. Why do I have to do marketing? I just want to do like IT. I was like, no. This is what you have to do now. Sorry, business owners do everything. That's a great point about financial advisors. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, so didn't sort of expect that transition, but once it happened, it felt very natural. So I think, once it started happening, I was sort of fully on board. I think the bug bred a bit with marketing, and, I think that the aspiration to work on big campaigns was probably the biggest driver. I think, you look at some of the big awards and stuff that go to, brands like Nando's, KFC, those. And I mean, we've especially my current role, run some amazing campaigns. And I think that part of executing to, sort of reporting and finalizing the campaign is just quite fulfilling in a way.
Mm. And that must be a real superpower in marketing roles. I think I see a lot of folks, and especially, folks come on this podcast, we have some wonderful creatives, and that's kind of definitely the area that I'm specialized in, but also the analytical side and like coming in with your background must be incredible, because I think a lot of folks, it's difficult to, I don't know, it's difficult to tap into that side of your brain as a creative. So I think that must be really cool for you.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been trying to sort of also bridge the gap with. I think I'm sometimes too analytical, and sort of have to rein it in a bit when I've got to sort of bring it back and sort of realize, okay, I can't just look at the data. I've kind of got to look at the sort of emotional side and the customer side. When you're marketing to someone, you've got to sort of put yourself in their shoes. And I think when you just look at the analytics, you sort of lose focus on that. So I'm personally trying to work on that. I think it's very important, especially when you're dealing with sort of the product side of things, because they're sort of buying into the brand, but also the emotional connection that the brand has with the customer.
Yeah. Okay. So together we would make the perfect marketer if we could somehow like combine
the left
our
and right
skills.
side of the brain,
that's all I know
together.
how to do. Amazing. Okay, Dean, left field question, but I just kind of want to absorb some knowledge from like a super results focused marketer. What is your North Star metric that you are most focused on in your role right now? Like, what is the number that you look at every single day?
Oh, that's a bit tricky. I think depending on what type of digital marketer you are, or what type of campaigns you're running, but if you're definitely looking at performance, it's definitely going to be return on ad spend.
Return on ad spend.
Yeah, so if you're running, your performance max campaigns in Google, you're running your search campaigns, if you're purely focused on just the sales side of things, which should be a component of every business, I think, is definitely return on ad spend. And, if you're looking at like 5 to 8 return on ad spend, you're probably in a good space. Depending on the product, wow. I think it will vary.
Okay, those numbers and words are so unfamiliar to me. It's made me realize how little I don't do much. Most of the marketing that I do is like organic. So I'm like signups, traffic.
Look, those things are very important. I think, if you're doing a sort of a brand campaign and you're focused on sort of building that brand awareness and consideration, you can definitely, your cost per click, your cost per 1,000 impressions, those are definitely important. I think those I wouldn't, when I look at those numbers, I definitely look at them sort of in the space of like, okay, how is it trending rather than what is the exact number?
That's a good tip.
Yeah, so you can look at it at the exact number and say, okay, wait, I'm paying too much per 1,000 impressions, and then sort of try and rein it in from there. But I'd rather look at it and say, okay, I'm paying too much now. Let me optimize and make my adjustments and see how it changes. I think there's an emotional feeling that you've got to sort of immediately stop everything. It's all going awry, and sort of shut everything down. And I think you don't necessarily get to the right spot if you do that.
That's such a good point. And I am also absolutely going to steal that in my next meeting. I'm just going to be like, but how is it trending?
Yeah, there you go. You just got to use the right words.
Okay, I will absolutely credit you there, Dean. I love that. That's a great tip. Okay, back to my planned questions. What advice would you give to marketers who are looking to specialize in the tech industry in the way that you have?
So I think I would definitely give the advice, sort of what I've touched on a bit before, is you don't want to lose focus on the sort of what your product is and who the customer is. So you need to balance the two, and you need to try and match them up. So I'll give a bit of an example. Within ASUS, we have quite a few segments of products, and we've segmented them out very specifically. And we'll have our VivoBook range, which is a range of laptops that is for most of your young adults, going to varsity students, sort of your more entry-level laptops, but come with things that are relevant to them, lightweight, has camera, decent RAM, those type of hardware and things. And through that segmentation, we're able to pull the right kind of audience for the right kind of product. And I think you need to be very careful, because if you're going to advertise the sort of a product to someone and it's not the right match, you're going to end up in digital marketing definitely spending a lot more than you'd like to.
Yeah.
And if you just sort of, because it doesn't start within the ad server, for example, as a digital advertiser, it sort of starts before that. What's the product team doing? What's the sales team doing? You've got to sort of find all those teams, build out what it looks like, the audience, what kind of visuals your product's going to still the display. If you also running influencer campaigns, POSM in stores, those things all need to match up and marry back to what your original thoughts are on the campaign. So definitely strategic thinking, I think, is the most important thing, and taking it down to the basics. If you get that right, all your different pillars within marketing fall in line, and things like your metrics will start looking better.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. It's very easy, especially when there are so many moving parts, to move away from the core kind of goal and message. Like if you're doing like influencers, and I mean, even that, for like, I've been managing some influencer campaigns at Buffer, and it's so complicated, like trying to match that audience to who you're trying to reach. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to consider. And that, I think, simplifies things if you kind of keep coming back to like, what are we trying to achieve? What is the core goal? What is the outcome that we're hoping for? And who is the audience? That's a great tip. Usually folks speak more generally and more broadly, but that is very actionable. I like that a lot.
I've experienced some challenges that brought up to light, where you sort of develop your campaign in the digital space and then all of a sudden it's not matching. Everything's off.
Yeah. I mean, at such a big company, that must be a real danger, because I'd imagine there's a lot of people working on the same thing.
And you often get top-down direction, especially, I think, anyone who's working in a sort of global company will understand that there's a lot of top-down direction. And I think South Africa is very unique in that we experience a lot of issues where localization doesn't happen. So, at Huawei, they, have a similar approach. And I think, if we didn't localize, we would have a challenge because it wouldn't meet the demographic of South Africa. A lot of globally, they don't necessarily see what we see locally, because they sort of go, oh no, but it's, generic sort of assets or whatever it may be. And it just doesn't match what South Africa is.
Is that because of the diversity of South Africa and like
Correct.
How many different, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think, for example, they would develop a campaign overseas and you would go, okay, this is great. But then they've sort of used the wrong demographics in the assets, the wording just doesn't align. And generally we fit within EMEA, I think, like East, the Middle East and Africa. And, when those teams develop assets, it's very different to South Africa. So I think that definitely is a problem if you're working with a global company. But I think that's one thing I think ASUS has done very well. There's been, a lot of focus on especially the content development side. It can be expensive, but I think the benefit, especially for South African teams, is having localized content.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, what's the point in having like a South African kind of arm if you're not going to listen to what folks are? And it's funny because, I've worked at like two US based companies now, and I've worked in London. And some of the issues that are top of mind for us often don't kind of register for like in those markets and in those people's minds. Even just like the idea of diversity, like, being like really representative. It's just, it doesn't even factor into decisions for folks in Europe and America in the way that it does here. And I think that is also a South African superpower, because we're so used to talking to so many different kinds of people and being empathetic to so many different kinds of people. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing to be able to do as a marketer.
It's unique to South Africa.
I love that.
in a
That's, I
way.
mean, that's what this podcast is all about, like how cool South African people are, really. So I love that you
Yeah.
brought that up. Okay, so this kind of ties into that. Maybe your answer will be similar, but what do you think have been the most important skills that you have cultivated in your career?
Yeah. So I think there's quite a few I think that's important, but within a working environment, and I think this can probably extend outside of marketing, but I think the most important thing is having a healthy working environment, especially with the team members that you're working with. Leaning back into what I was saying earlier about sort of things having to work together. I've had a lot of instances. I think this is one of the challenges I had at Vodacom. And I think Vodacom's a great company, but I think they did have problems with teams working together, sort of problems between co-workers. And ultimately that kind of impacts every sort of element.
Yeah.
And I think also just your own ability to function within a team. You know, so luckily at ASUS, I think we have a very strong, tight-knit team. And I think that's comes to the forefront in a lot of our results and our successes. If there was a bit of more turmoil, you know, then it's a challenge. So definitely within the teams that I work within and wherever I try and work, I definitely focus on that. Above all else, like I would happily take a unsuccessful campaign if things are, you know, good within the teams, because it will come through in every aspect.
Yeah, I love that. That makes so much sense. I think just kind of being able to bounce ideas off someone or feeling psychologically safe with the people that you work with is such an underrated thing. So in terms of that skill, you mean kind of learning to adapt or learning to be kind of sensitive to the way your teammates work. Okay.
And I think coming from some spaces where that's been a challenge, over time I've sort of worked on that, because, you know, it's very easy to go and sort of watch some podcasts or YouTube videos on how to run an ad or how to develop a campaign. But when you sort of that's a very easy skill to pick up from just sort of reading books, doing whatever. But now trying to foster a good environment, can be a challenge, because it's not a definitive 1 or 0. It's, you know, sort of a broad range.
Yeah, culture is a difficult thing to navigate and nurture. And that's such a great tip. Like the most successful, and I've never really connected the dots here before, but I think the most successful that I have been in my work is when I've been part of a team that works really well together, that is kind of rowing towards the same goals.
I think also it's very easy to go, oh no, but that's sort of, you know, management needs to deal with that, the organization needs to deal with that. But I think most of the time it actually starts with just sort of your team and your direct people you're dealing with. And then it sort of expands from there. Not to say that it's not the responsibility of the organization, but I think you can have an impact.
Yeah, there's nothing worse for me than, oh, that's not my problem at work,
yes.
or that's not my job. Like that's, and I also think that's like a very South African trait, is we tend to take ownership of things, and we tend to just kind of want to, you know, make a plan, find a solution.
Yeah.
And that's also just, a superpower that is worth highlighting. Okay, Dean, my last question for you. This is a fun one. Let's imagine you could have a conversation with your younger self. So the Dean just moving from a financial advisor to marketer. What would you tell him?
That is a tough question. I think I would tell him probably not to stress out so much about mistakes and about things, because I think definitely starting my career, that was something that I did a lot. You know, working extra hours because, I'm so worried about mistakes and everything. I think I've learned now to sort of just deal with that and sort of accept that mistakes are made, and that's how you learn. But I definitely, in my previous career or like in my past positions, that's been a big problem for me in having to deal with that. I think that's what I would tell him.
Yeah, I love that, because I come back to this so often, kind of having worked in a very like high pressure journalism environment and then moving to marketing. Like everything in media kind of feels like do or die. Like it has to be right, or, you know, really it's going to impact people's lives. But one of my favorite things about working in marketing is that no one is going to die. In most cases, if you make a mistake, there are going to be no dire consequences if you're slightly behind on your deadline. And or whatever the case is. So that is a great note to end on. Take care of yourselves.
Yes, 100%.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dean. That is everything that I was hoping to get to today. If folks are looking to find you, follow your work, see how things are going, where can they do that?
So you can definitely follow me on LinkedIn, and also check out ASUS. Check out our socials. We're always running cool campaigns and doing fun things. I definitely think everyone should watch podcasts, learn, do whatever. Go follow the big brands. You don't necessarily need to follow me, but I think those are important for people trying to get out there in the marketing space.
Yeah, I love that. Also because I have podcasts, but that is a great tip. Also because things are changing so fast in marketing, and I think people are learning kind of on the fly and sharing those insights now, more publicly than ever before on podcasts and on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So that is a great tip. If you are looking to connect with folks like Dean and myself, there is a lovely little community where you can do exactly that. Like this podcast, it is called SA Tech Marketers, and it is the home for connecting, learning, and growing in the tech marketing space. It is also a spot where you will regularly find exciting new remote opportunities. So you will find the link to join in the show notes. I'm also going to chat to Dean about potentially joining the community. So maybe he will be there as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Dean, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.